Okay, happy Friday. Welcome to the State Department. One thing for you at the top in our Free the Press campaign. Today we're highlighting the case, the murder of Vladimir Honcharenko. He was the editor of a newspaper on environmental security and an environmental activist in the Ukraine. On July 27, 2012, Mr. Honorenko held a press conference on his investigation that revealed the illegal dumping of 180 tons of dangerous chemical and radioactive industrial waste in the city of Kryvyi Rih in the Ukraine. The city denied the allegations of illegal dumping. 4 days later, unknown assailants beat him so severely that he was hospitalized and died. The United States calls for a thorough investigation of his murder in order to bring the perpetrators to justice. So having said that, I will turn it over to all of you.
Can we start with Syria?
Yep.
Syrian officials today have rejected the assessment that you made public yesterday. Do you have anything to say to that? Do you have any more proof so that this claim you made is somehow substantiated?
Well, if the regime has nothing to hide, they should let the UN investigators in immediately so we can get to the bottom of this. As we said yesterday, we're working to establish credible and corroborated facts to build on this intelligence assessment in order to establish a definitive judgment as to whether or not the president's red line has been crossed. So that's what we're pursuing. And as I said yesterday, it's both the UN process, but we'll continue to consult very closely with friends, allies, and concerned parties as we look at this body of evidence.
Can you just say, there's been a lot of talk about, including from the president, that this would be a game changer if they did it.
Those were the president's words.
Right. Up to now, nothing seems to have changed. Can you tell me what might have changed now that you've presented this evidence, yet we're in exactly the same situation we were yesterday?
To clarify, Brad,
2 days ago.
We're working to establish a definitive judgment as to whether or not the president's red line of chemical weapons use has been crossed. We're not there yet, but we're very carefully looking at the information, working to establish credible and corroborated facts. And to be clear, you talk about sort of an intelligence assessment. That is the assessment, but we're working to further corroborate the evidence. And the evidence must build on the intelligence assessment as we seek to establish the corroborated facts. So that's where we are right now, but the President and others have said, and the White House has said, that all options are on the table as we look at a range of scenarios here and we continue to look at the facts.
If this intelligence assessment has so little fact in it that it's basically not worth making any policy decisions based on, why make it public?
Well, look, I really refer to the White House in terms of the timing of responding to the congressional inquiries on this. It was an administration decision to respond to those inquiries in a public, unclassified fashion. But the bottom line is, given the history that we all know in terms of intelligence assessments when it comes to WMD, it's important to look very carefully at all the available evidence. And in addition to the intelligence assessments, we have to work to corroborate the facts. Jill, go ahead.
Can you tell us, please, what Secretary Kerry did this morning up on Capitol Hill?
Secretary Kerry had a briefing on Capitol Hill on the House side, similar to his briefing yesterday on the Senate side. Syria was, again, one of the topics. It was a classified hearing, but, again, these were hearings that have been scheduled a while back for the Secretary to update members on both the Senate and the House on some of the key issues key diplomatic issues he's been working on, Syria and North Korea, certainly among those. So that was the focus of this morning's briefing.
One of the participants is quoted as saying that they did discuss possible options. Can you confirm that he, at least even in general, you could confirm that he talked about possible options after this?
Again, I can't get into the details of a classified briefing, but certainly the President on down have said that all options are on the table, and we'll be looking at those. But in terms of the actual details of a classified session, we can't get into the details of that one way or another. Go ahead, Camille.
After that meeting, some members of Congress said that Russia needs to be more involved in this. And I wondered if you could update us on this building's conversations with your counterparts in Russia about where to go next on Syria.
Well, our interaction with the Russians on the issue of Syria is intensive and has been going back, as you know, many months. I don't have anything to update you for in terms of meetings or diplomatic conversations just in the past hours, but we do have a robust conversation with the Russian government on the Syria account, including as recently as when the Secretary met with his Russian counterpart last week. But we continue to briefed them in a number of different formats and continue to be in close collaboration with them on all of these issues.
I mean, have you shared your intelligence assessments about these chemical weapons with the Russians?
I'll have to check on that detail in specific. I'm not sure in terms of intelligence sharing one way or another, other than to say that this issue is something that we, broadly speaking, have been in touch with the Russians on, and they too have expressed a concern about the use of these horrific weapons. Go ahead.
Joseph from Sky News Arabia.
Yep.
If this is proven, like Syria has used chemical weapons, would do you consider this as an act of war, like a war crime? And what are the actions that the United States might take or would take? Does it include military actions?
Again, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals of, precisely what we may be considering, but all options are on the table, and we've said that consistently. Okay. Other topics? Okay, sure.
Lucas Tomlinson, Fox News. Patrick, is going back to the UN or another resolution a possible avenue to go ahead, or is NATO expressing any willingness to be more involved? I know people are a little shy from...
Again, when we talk about all options, of course, it came sort of in the previous question in a military context, but it's a diplomatic context as well. So we'll look at everything appropriately, and we know the history of what's happened at the Security Council in terms of the 3 vetoed resolutions and the difficulty we've had there given Chinese and Russian opposition, but we're always willing to look at whatever diplomatic initiatives may be helpful. I don't have anything for you one way or another. Again, I'm not sure. I'd have to check in terms of a definition one way or another. Clearly, the use of chemical weapons would cross the President's red line. I'd have to check on a legal definition. Samir, go ahead.
Any new information, update on the 2 kidnapped bishops in Syria?
We still don't have an update. We continue to call for their immediate release, and we'll continue to look for more information, but it appears they have not been released yet, and we'll continue to call publicly and make clear our belief that they should be released. Okay. Go ahead, sir. Yep. Tell me your name and your outlet.
U.S. citizen Timothy Hallett Tracy has been arrested. There are charges that he's a spy for the U.S., that he received funds from a NGO tied to the U.S. government. Have you been able to, the consulate has been able to talk to him at all? And what is the latest from your side?
Yep. So we are aware of the arrest of a U.S. citizen in Caracas. We're seeking further information from the Venezuelan government on the case, and we're seeking consular access to the detained individual. Because of privacy considerations, we're unable to comment on the specific case further at this time. But let me just say that these type of accusations are the latest in a series of allegations made by the Venezuelan government in recent weeks against a variety of quote-unquote foreign actors, suggesting efforts to affect political developments in Venezuela. These allegations have not been substantiated. The U.S. continues to categorically reject any allegations of U.S. government efforts to destabilize the Venezuelan government or to harm anyone in Venezuela. So, again, we're still looking for more information about this specific case, but that's the broad sweep of the pattern that we've seen.
But there's no link between Mr. Tracy and any U.S. government agency?
Again, this is about an arrest of a private U.S. citizen. Go ahead.
Patrick,
Joe.
Another story kind of in that vein. The
Yep.
U.S. Has indicted a former State Department employee who is living in Sweden.
Right.
What can you tell us about that, and what will happen with extradition? We understand the Swedes only extradite citizens to other EU members. Is that correct?
I really have to refer you to the Department of Justice. This is an ongoing legal matter, and this is really better directed to the Department of Justice. I know you're interested because of the former employment and that connection, but in terms of the ongoing legal matter, it really is a Department of Justice concern, so I refer you to them on this matter.
Can I ask you,
Go ahead, Brad.
do you have any more information on Bangladesh, whether any American companies were sourcing
Yeah.
product from...
I did check again this morning, Brad, and we still don't have information one way or another on any American companies. I know that it's a fairly chaotic scene as they go through and continue to work through this very grim scene. But in terms of American...
The companies are not,
Right.
the names of companies are not lost in the rubble. It's a...
Well, my understanding is that there were a number of floors in this facility that had a number of different companies, and so in terms of making, doing our due diligence, in terms of looking at not only sort of subcontractors and other associations, we don't have any information
So you found
at
none
this
so
point.
far.
We've found none so far.
Okay.
Thanks, Brad. Go ahead, Catherine.
Today there was a hearing of the Europe, Eurasia, and Emerging Threat Subcommittee on the House.
Yep.
A couple of the members and even one of the panelists were dismayed that there was not any State Department representation there to testify. Did you receive a request for someone to go to this hearing on state's behalf? And if so, the representatives were saying the request was declined. Why was it declined? And then one representative specifically said that state seems too busy to send someone here and suggested this might be part of the problem with the region of Chechnya, that it hasn't gotten the attention it deserves.
I believe we did have a request on this subcommittee. Let me just say that, I mean, first of all, the Secretary of State of the United States of America was on Capitol Hill all morning yesterday and today, and so we've had close cooperation with the Congress. And I think in terms of the reason that they're interested in Chechnya is probably because of the issue going on with Russia and the Boston bombings, and I think that's the tie that they're looking at it. And so my understanding is that there were extensive hearings up on the Hill in the past couple of days, and we did have State Department representatives there to accompany Department of Justice witnesses as well, and this is at the committee level. So I'd have to check again on this particular subcommittee, but my understanding is that in the past couple of days there have been pretty extensive hearings and witnesses from the Department of Justice, and we made State Department people available as necessary. So thank you. Go ahead.
China?
Yep.
Chinese government called Senkakus as a core interest today at the press conference. This is first time in history that they called Senkaku core interest publicly. How do you take this comment?
I really hadn't seen the remark, but our position on the Senkakus has not changed. Go ahead.
Japanese government and the Chinese government officials met in Beijing today to discuss the current situation on Senkaku East China Sea. And what kind of progress do you expect they're gonna make?
Well, I'm not sure what kind of progress in one specific bilateral exchange, but we've consistently pushed for good and close cooperation between the Chinese and the Japanese, and an improvement of the diplomatic situation there.
A question about Japan is that
Yep.
Japanese government will hold a ceremony on this weekend to celebrate the 61st anniversary of the restoration of the sovereignty from the United States to Japan after World War II. And this is the first time that this kind of event will be held by Japanese government. And I was just wondering if you have any comment on that.
Let me look into it for you after the briefing. I'm not aware of this specific event in Japan. Scott, go ahead.
In Guatemala, the trial of Rios Montt was suspended this week as it approached final arguments. Does the United States have any concern that that suspension might undermine efforts to have accountability for human rights violations in Guatemala?
Well, first of all, let me say, Scott, that the United States supports credible, independent, and transparent and impartial judicial processes, including in Guatemala in this case. The Rios Montt trial is historic, not only for Guatemala, but for the international community. It's the first prosecution of a former head of state at the national level for genocide. And the trial is also an unprecedented and complex legal situation. So we urge the government of Guatemala to ensure that this legal case is conducted in accordance with Guatemala's domestic and international legal obligations, and we expect the process and outcome will advance the rule of law. So I don't have an update for you on these most recent developments one way or another, but broadly speaking, we're pushing for a credible, independent, transparent, and impartial judicial process in this case. Go ahead, Lau.
Follow up one on Bangladesh. Do you
Yep.
have anything additional on this Bangladesh tragedy? Have you any further on any presence of U.S. companies in that building?
Brad just asked about that. I already answered that we don't have updated information. Go ahead, Brad. You looked like you had a question.
Can I ask you about Amir Hekmati?
Yep.
His family was in the building yesterday, I believe, and had some meetings. What are you doing to help get him released?
Yep. Thanks for the question, Brad. We continue to have serious concerns about the fate of U.S. citizen Amir Hekmati. We are determined to secure his release and remain deeply concerned about his well-being in Iranian custody. Our diplomatic efforts to secure Mr. Hekmati's release are ongoing, and this is what we discussed with his sister yesterday in the meeting she had with senior officials at the department. One of our highest priorities is ensuring the safety and well-being of U.S. citizens overseas, and we've been continuously working to secure the release of Mr. Hekmati.
They want this to raise to secretary level. There's been no statement, I think, from Secretary Kerry, but there have been statements about the pastor. Are you gonna augment your effort by kind of raising the political level of this?
We've been very clear. There's a few of these cases of American citizens where we've been very clear and robust in our public commentary that they should be freed. I can't get into sort of our private diplomatic efforts because they're, again, very sensitive in terms of trying to help secure the release, but we've been very focused on his case and indeed the others that you've mentioned.
Okay, but he is a veteran. I guess, you would think he would get as much treatment as a private pastor.
Again, we're looking for the release of all these American citizens, and there's a few cases out there, as I mentioned, and so we take them all very seriously. Go ahead in the back.
Turkish Foreign Ministry condemned President Obama's April 24 statement on remembrance of the so-called Armenian genocide. Do you have any reaction to that?
The statement stands for itself, and really refer to the President's very clear statement.
And also 2 months ago, U.S. failed to honor victims of the Khojaly massacre committed by the Armenians. Do you have any reaction to the statement that it is a one-sided approach to honor victims on one side and ignore victims on the other sides, on all the other sides?
Well, we've talked about this before, and I'll give the same response, which is that the tragic loss of life in the war between Azerbaijan and Armenia reminds us that there cannot be a military solution to the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Only a lasting and peaceful settlement can bring stability, prosperity, and reconciliation to the region. And you know that the United States is a co-chair of the Minsk Group, and we remain firmly committed to working with both sides to achieve peace. Looks like we had one more, Lalit.
Follow up on yesterday's question. The Indian embassy has said that they have raised with the State Department yesterday on the ill treatment of an Indian minister at the Boston airport. Do you have any response to that?
I'm not sure about the Indian communication directly here with the State Department, but what I said yesterday stands. We very much have a strong bilateral relationship with Indian government officials, and refer you to Department of Homeland Security on airport operations. Scott?
The Enough Project today released satellite imagery that it says shows that Sudan is supporting the Lord's Resistance Army and Joseph Kony. Does the United States government believe that to be the case?
The United States is aware and continues to evaluate reports that the LRA has operated in the disputed Kafia Kingi area claimed by both Sudan and South Sudan. The U.S. and the international community as a whole would take very seriously any credible evidence of support or safe haven being provided to the LRA. And I do point you back to the December 2012 presidential statement at the UN Security Council that expressed concern about possible LRA presence in Kafia Kingi. So we continue to discuss our concerns about the whereabouts of Joseph Kony with all governments in the region, including with the government of Sudan, and we have encouraged Sudan to cooperate with regional efforts to counter the LRA. More broadly speaking on the LRA, I did want to make the point that we're in a position now where 2 of the top 5 commanders are gone. The number of people killed by the LRA has gone down by 66%, and defections continue. So our pressure on the LRA continues.
Have you had the opportunity to look at the information that was released today and determine whether that meets the threshold of credible information?
We're aware of it, and we continue to evaluate, and our experts continue to look at it. Thank you, Scott. All right. Thank you all.